When a baby is born, its first cry shows that it might be scared of the new world it's in. But as it drinks its mom's warm milk and feels her love, it starts thinking that life might not be so scary. But what if the mom, who should make the baby feel safe, doesn't do that and instead makes life seem harsh? In that case, the baby might hope for someone to rescue them. This story is about a baby boy who was left alone right after being born. The nurse who was supposed to take care of him didn't give him food, so the first few hours of his life were painful and hungry. The story begins with Ellie Marie, the baby's mom, sneaking out of the hospital right after giving birth. No one knows how she did it. Ellie was the only girl in her family. Her mom passed away when she was just 3 years old, so her dad and older brothers raised her. Unlike many girls who grow up with sisters, Ellie was very girly. Her dad tried really hard to make her feel like her mom was still there by doing her hair and buying her pretty dresses, but he didn't do it quite right. People thought she was strange because of her unique style and tall hairstyles, and she didn't have many friends or admirers. Wearing glasses and braces didn't help either. Other kids mostly ignored her. While everyone else was getting asked to prom in exciting ways and getting big Valentine's Day gifts, Ellie stayed in the background, wishing someone would notice her. Then something special happened in her second to last year of high school. Ellie got a guy who liked her named John. John had joined the school that year. Being the smart girl that she was, the school's principal asked Ellie to show him around and help him with his studies. John saw past her awkwardness, and after a while, he and Ellie became a couple. During the relationship, she and her boyfriend started doing things she wasn't comfortable with. She wasn't naive, but she was eager to please, and that put her in trouble. Her desire to please got her pregnant. She suspected it when her period was late, but she pushed back the thought. When she started having major symptoms, she knew she had to take a test. She got a pregnancy kit and found out she was pregnant. In the store where she bought the kit, the attendant slipped in a flyer that gave her directions on where she could get an abortion. After confirming she was pregnant, she decided to take the attendant's silent advice to get rid of the baby. She slipped out of school one day and went to the place. It was a scary-looking place, but she had made up her mind. As she was about to enter the place, she saw 2 young people crying by the entrance. Their friend had died during the procedure. Immediately, she turned around and headed back to school. It was a wake-up call. She knew that she couldn't go through with the abortion, but she had no clue what to do next. Ellie couldn't talk to anyone because she was so ashamed. She even ended the relationship with her boyfriend without telling him why. She did not want him involved in the decision-making. When her pregnancy began to show, the teenager left home, leaving only a note that said she was going to find herself. Her family had noticed that she had not been herself before she ran away, but they felt she was sad due to heartbreak. They had tried their best to console her, but she told them she needed to heal on her own, so they had to let her be. When they saw the note, they contacted the ex-boyfriend to get more details, but he didn't have any clue. They did all they could to find her, all to no avail. They had no clue she was pregnant. Ellie panicked because her dad and siblings had warned her fervently against getting pregnant. Her siblings were extremely protective, and she didn't know how far they would go if they found out. All through the months before the baby's birth, Ellie lived a horrible life. She got a job washing dishes at a restaurant, but she could barely afford her place to stay, so she started working more than one job to sustain herself. She was only 17 years old, and there was only little she could do. Ellie knew that she couldn't take care of the baby herself, but she decided not to get her family involved, no matter how bad it got. She started thinking of other ways not to have the baby in her life. One day, while working, her water broke. She was rushed to the hospital, and after several gruesome hours of labor, the baby was born. The nurses took the baby from her to clean it, and when one returned to give her the baby to feed, they found only a note. It read, his first name should be Bill, and his second name Carrie. After seeing the note, the nurse rushed out to tell people what had happened. Due to the severity of the situation, the nurse got carried away and forgot to feed little Bill. Bill was left alone with no care. A volunteer at the hospital, Amelia, overheard the nurses discussing the baby who had been abandoned. She heard that he had been put into the nursery and decided to take a peek. Amelia heard his cry before she saw him. He was already out of breath from crying so hard, and his cries had reduced to little sobs. As a volunteer, she knew where the emergency baby food was kept. She hurried to make him the formula. The nurse who ought to feed the baby came in not long after, and she found out that Bill was no longer in the cot. She panicked, thinking Ellie had returned for her baby, and she ran out to check. On her way out, she found Amelia in the office close to the nursery, feeding Bill. That's how Amelia began to care for Bill. Amelia would go to the hospital very early to take care of Bill. She would pick him up, feed him, and watch over him until she was needed elsewhere. The nurses sometimes left her alone to tend to the baby all day. One day, Amelia got to the nursery and found that Bill's breathing was labored. She was so scared and called for the nurses. Several tests were carried out, and the doctor found out that he had fluid in his respiratory system. Before that, the hospital had started looking for ways to get Bill a home. They had contacted social services, but due to Bill's ailment, they kept him in the hospital until he was fine. The representative of social services was asked to come back for him. Amelia knew they had started looking for a home for Bill, and she didn't want to see him go to just any home. She casually told a friend about Bill, the circumstances surrounding his birth, and how fond of him she had grown. She concluded by saying she wished she knew someone who could adopt him. Amelia had made the statement without knowing it was just what her friend needed to hear. Her friend's sister had been trying for a baby for several years without any success. Several IVF treatments and fertility procedures had failed. They had thought of adopting but preferred to adopt a baby. It was their lucky chance. Right away, Amelia's friend phoned her sister and shared the news about Bill. The sister showed interest and got in touch with the hospital. The hospital invited them to visit Bill and decide whether they wanted to become his parents. After meeting Bill, they instantly grew fond of him and decided to adopt him. Amelia carefully dressed and groomed Bill in anticipation of their arrival. She was overjoyed when she received the news. The hospital management was also delighted with this development. They contacted social services and began the process of preparing the adoption papers. Everything went smoothly, and within a few days, Bill was on his way to his new home. Amelia was chosen as his godmother, a role she was perfectly suited for. The little boy might not remember the circumstances of his birth unless someone tells him, but one thing is certain, he was fortunate. While he may never meet his biological parents, he found a loving family that he truly deserved. His story shows that you can consider some people as family even if you're not related by blood. What are your thoughts on this story? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Thank you.